The last piece is one of my favorite pieces that I've ever written. Interestingly enough, I write on a blog, so I kind of know what people like and what people don't like. And interestingly enough, people don't read this one very much. This piece has a few purposes. I've thought a lot about what we do as physicians. And one thing is we do tend to see lots of sadness and pain. And it's like a weight that sometimes we carry on our shoulders. And I think of that sometimes as our burden. And I became really interested in this idea of what do we do when our burden becomes too heavy? And the thought that kept coming to mind is we lay our burden down. So I went on the internet, as I always do, and I Googled the term, and I came across a beautiful poem by Maya Angelou from I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. And so I wrote this piece after reading that. You'll notice a few things about this piece. One is I chose a very heavy burden, which is the death of a patient who's a child, because I think that's one of the greatest burdens that doctors face. The other part is the doctor who I describe in here is actually quite a bit of an old-style doctor. Someone you imagine maybe 10 or 20 years ago with a bow tie, not what we see nowadays. And part of the reason is I have a lot of opinions about what our current doctors do with their burden versus the older doctors. And that's a whole nother talk. So this is called I Forgive You. Staring into the tiny mirror perched above the bathroom sink, he started his morning in the same fashion he had every day for the past 30 years. He winced from the splash of aftershave on his face, he straightened his bow tie one last time, and he studied his own steely gray eyes in the reflection in front of him. His lips barely moved as he softly pronounced the words to no one in particular. I forgive you. The drive to the hospital took less than 5 minutes. The walk from the doctor's parking lot to the physician's lounge was half of that. He picked up his lab coat from the hanger next to the mailboxes and rushed up the stairs to see his first young patient. Matt was just a teenager of calculated years, but in view of his multiple rounds of chemotherapy and failed bone marrow transplant, he had traversed several long and difficult lifetimes. And even in death, he evaded the immaturity and self-centeredness of many of those his age. Matt had one last request of the doctor who had navigated his medical care so expertly, to help him explain his last decision to his parents. The family meeting lasted a full hour. The doctor left Matt curled with his mother and father on his hospital bed and raced to the office. The methodical pace of the clinic helped take his mind off the tragedy. In each child's eyes, he saw the pain that Matt suffered, the pain he was still suffering. And in each parental tone of concern, the doctor remembered the anguish of the two individuals whose hearts were breaking at that very moment. By the end of the day, Matt's situation worsened. Countless family members huddled in the bedside. On the desk lay a school yearbook with signatures and well wishes written in bubbly and careless lettering. The doctor sat at a distance, fingering his bow tie and clearing his throat from time to time. Years of experience taught him that it wasn't words that families sought at such difficult times, it was the mere act of being present that brought comfort. He ambled home at 8 o'clock. His wife had left dinner for him on the stove. He sat quietly and picked at the food as he leafed through a throwaway journal his beloved had placed on the table. He wasn't particularly hungry. The call alerting him to Matt's death came in the early morning hours. He fumbled while putting the phone back on the receiver in an attempt to spare his snoring wife from the inconvenience of her husband's chosen profession. He awoke a few hours later without the benefit of an alarm clock. He bounced out of bed, he brushed his teeth, shaved and took a shower in usual fashion. He winced from the aftershave and straightened his bow tie. I forgive you. A younger man may have been repenting for his own imperfections as a physician. An angrier man may have been letting his patients off the hook for the intense frailty of the human condition. Being a wise man, he had long outgrown this type of immature frivolity. No, he was absolving the universe of such random and abject cruelty. He was purging all malice toward a higher being who could allow Matt and his parents to suffer so. For him to continue, year after year, in a profession that inflicted deep wounds, he had to lay his burden down. And this is from Maya Angelou. It was a large heart with lots of hearts growing smaller inside, and piercing from the outside rim to the smallest heart was an arrow. Mama said, "Sister, that's right pretty." Then she turned back to the store and resumed, "Glory, glory, hallelujah, when I lay my burden down." That's I forgive you.